After having sort of done these trips for 27 times over more than 2 decades, just my respect for politicians has gone up on average. Whatever little sort of feeling I had about ever sort of entering the fray has been totally extinguished because I've realized how just difficult this job is. It's a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
There is no personal life because it's very intrusive in the way things are, and to deliver with a broken state is extremely difficult.
Hello and welcome to Bibliofile, and here we are today to discuss this most fascinating, riveting book by Ruchir Sharma, Democracy on the Road. Thank you very much, Ruchir, for joining us. Ruchir has been taking a group of journalists for the last 20 years,
yes,
and on 27 trips. And this is an outcome of that. And I must make this disclosure that I'm also part of the group and I've been to a few trips with Ruchir. So to begin with, Ruchir, as I was saying, this is something that, sort of a real feel you get, we have read many political books, about politics in India, and this shows it's an experiential sort of a feeling that you get. Is that why you first of all wanted?
No, that was my entire idea, which is the fact that I think that if you look at books which have been written, you've typically had books written about one election campaign after one election was over, or you've had books written about one leader. Yes. What I really wanted to do here was to write something which was an account of India, and also to take people into places which we would never go to otherwise. So as you know, there are accounts of the fact that we've been to places like Betia, we've been to places like Lalgarh. So those are the kind of places that we have been to, and for me that is what I wanted to bring out, and also to show that there's such a contrast between the celluloid image of some of these places and what the real image is. Like I have an entire section on Mirzapur in February of 2017. Now the celluloid image is that this is the place where if you were to go, you could be knocked down at any point in time.
Yes.
But what the reality is much more prosaic, and what are these places like? So I think that's what I've tried to sort of bring out in the book. So it's really a journey across India rather than through the political lens, rather than just a political book is how I'd like it to be perceived.
And in the 20 years that you've seen, you're such a keen observer of both politics and economics and other things that the country has to offer. What would you say have been the biggest changes that you've noticed, both physically as well as in mindsets of people?
So one of my favorite sort of portions in the book really has to do with my return to Bijnor trip.
Yes.
So as you know, this book begins with Bijnor, which is where my roots lie in a way, because my maternal grandparents were there, and I used to spend every summer in Bijnor. So it sort of begins there and it ends also in Bijnor, because I returned to Bijnor to write the closing chapter, and in between are all the 27 election trips that the group has been on. And so at the end of that Bijnor chapter, the return to Bijnor chapter, what I speak about is how after changes upon changes, India remains the same in so many ways. And for me, that really captures India because of one detail that I offer there, that 30 years ago, it took us 4 hours to travel the 160-kilometer distance from Delhi to Bijnor. 30 years later, when I went there late last year, it's still taking us 4 hours to travel the distance from Delhi to Bijnor. Things have changed along the way, that you have much broader roads, concretized, you have much more development, but the increase in traffic and also the increase in encroachments and the development along the way has been such that the time taken is still the same. So that I find quite remarkable.
And would you say this is drastically different from the other emerging markets or other countries like India that you visit?
China, for example, is a totally different case in terms of what's the infrastructure development and stuff. There it always seems to be ahead almost of what the demand is. Here we are always sort of chasing demand. So that I think is the big difference between these countries.
Have you noticed any major change in the it's been 70 years now after all. Have you noticed in people, women coming forward more, let's say?
No, of course. So in terms of the transformation of India continues in that way. Women is a great point that you make out, that you clearly see many more women now on voting booths. You clearly see more of them sort of wanting to assert their own vote rather than saying that I'll vote the way the family votes. So we see much more of that. Yeah, we've seen that. I think that the Bengal election of 2011, because most of these election trips, when we end up doing them, we typically go to the polls well before the election date, right? I mean, our trips. This was one election where we happened to just land in Kolkata on the day of the polling, and we were all very impressed to see the number of women who had shown up out there for voting. So yeah, so I think that is one change which has taken place. But the second point that I'll make here is the fact that this caste business, I think this is very interesting, because at one level, some of the very raw discrimination at a caste level is gone. We're no longer at the stage where they can't enter the same bus or travel on the same road virtually. I think that sort of discrimination is gone. But again, going back to my earlier statement that changes upon changes, so in so many ways India remains the same. The one point that I still feel that that hasn't changed is that at a political level, I think these caste lines are still very strong in this country, and I think that's something at an urban level many people don't quite understand or appreciate that much. But as I say in the book, there are about a multitude of factors which determine what dictates an election in India in terms of, for a candidate, how to win or lose. And I think that one constant observation is that development is at best just one of those many factors. But to fight an election in India on the platform of development is very difficult. That even in one of the states that we have seen transform the most in all our travels has been Bihar. And despite all that Nitish Kumar has done for that state, he still can't get more than 20% of the vote share. And he's constantly in the need of building a caste coalition to be the chief minister.
You know, the point you made about Mirzapur, I mean, as you go there, the celluloid image that people here probably have in Delhi and Bombay, and what you, would you say it's the same that when it comes to election political analysis, you know, the analysis that people do in TV studios, etc., in the cities, and when you actually go and meet the people, especially the MLAs or the contestants, do you find a complete difference in?
No, I don't want to diss all the analysis that people are doing, but all I know is the fact that, and I think that, you know, we have had people on our trips who are very good pollsters.
Yes.
But I think that what they'll also tell you is that over time they've learned the benefit of these trips, that compared to just raw data, when you're out there and talking to people, the feel that you get is what really shapes the true analysis.
In fact, it's incredible that in the 27 trips, it's only once in the book you say that the group has got the direction of the election wrong.
Yes.
That's an amazing record. I mean, it's like better than any opinion poll, you know, can ever claim to have.
Yeah, I think like the collective intelligence of 20 bright minds being on the road is, there's something to say for. And now, of course, of those 20 people, there are some people who have mentioned who have never won a poll, and there are some people who won a poll multiple times, but there's nobody who dominates also in such a way that they're winning every poll. So I think there's something to be said about the collective intelligence of 20 people out there on the road, sensing what is happening. And what I also find very amazing is that within the group, there are such ideological divisions as well, and I find it very remarkable that when two people get out of the car to go and meet people, that they can come back with exactly the opposite sort of insights, even though they've been to exactly the same spot.
It's always a sort of a Rashomon sort of effect.
Exactly. These trips are much more than that. This is really a learning of this country, because one, India comes alive at election time in terms of what happens. It's a big carnival. It's the emotions are you know, out there on your sleeves in terms of how people display them. So I think that this is for me a real journey of India, more than just getting the election forecast correct. That is something which we want to believe in.
In fact, the book is full of such absolutely fantastic anecdotes. Like for instance, of Mayawati you talk about, and then there's this crazy photo of Captain Vijay who's showing his muscle. You know, so what are the other colorful characters, leaders that you met who are like who remain in your mind?
No, like so many of them that that for example, I think that it became very difficult to meet Jayalalitha subsequently because she became so reclusive. So I still have that memory of meeting with her in 2006 so vividly, like in my mind, and also on that she was both a very popular figure and also a very imperial figure, that waiting for her that nobody wanted to disturb her in the afternoon to go and tell her that 20 people are waiting for you.
I see.
And then, after 2 or 3 hour wait, she finally emerges and the way the whole sort of setup is done. That when you have such meetings, it sort of stays in your head. Sometimes it's the build up to it. So I think that Jayalalitha is obviously that, and then to also see.
And the other side is, I think, somebody like Lalu Prasad Yadav was so warm and welcoming and so informal
and so entertaining in terms of that. Like that. No matter what people say about him, that when you are in his company, you are really entertained. That I remember that in 2014, when we went on our election trip to Bihar, and so many of the leaders outside the BJP that you met were quite despondent at that point in time. But the one person who was still fighting along and his sense of humor was still intact was Lalu Prasad Yadav.
And in the 20 years that you've been traveling, you would have, there has also been a sort of a generational change in the politicians also. The sons have taken over, the daughters are up. How would you, the old world charm that you're talking about of a Lalu Prasad, has that filtered down to some of the younger ones, or is it a different breed?
No, I think that there's no generalization, but it does. Now, for example, one person who I find is also, has his own charm when we meet him is like Akhilesh, in terms of, and I think that at some level he's possibly more endearing than Mulayam.
And who would you say has been one of the most astute politicians, who really sort of knows the pulse of the people, maybe doesn't say so much?
Ramvilas Paswan, that he always seems to get the winning side right, apart from maybe 2009 when he was on the wrong side. But he seems like that. But even small conversations reveal a lot. Like one interesting character that I've always found, fun to chat with at a private level is someone like Sharad Yadav. Now these are figures who are not that well known outside, like the small political circles or in Bihar. But when you have these side conversations with them, you come away appreciating about the insights they have on the ground.
And Ruchir, before we end, I have to ask, before I leave you, this one last question, that have you never been tempted to actually be in the poll fray? You're such a sort of passionate observer and lover. I mean, like, why not? How about contesting
just as I told you that, like after having sort of done this trip for 27 times over more than 2 decades, just my respect for politicians has gone up on average. Whatever little sort of feeling I had about ever sort of entering the fray has been totally extinguished, because I've realized how just difficult this job is. It's a 24/7 job. There is no personal life because it's very intrusive in the way things are, and to deliver with a broken state is extremely difficult.
Thank you very much, Ruchir. Thank you very much for talking to Bibliofile.
Great, Satish. Thanks.